Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, awarded RevTech strategist of 2024. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest talks about how product-led growth and sales-led growth, the results are muddled by sales, customer success, and marketing performance. The solution to this is value-led growth. So he says once you lead with value, your product creates a whole organization that can move away from products and team silos to a much more customer-centric narrative and increases the scale of value and reduces the time to value. You're going to love this conversation. We go into talking about how teams going forward will look different based upon value-led growth and the benefits of it, and how we're already moving in that direction. My next guest has a background in engineering, a 2-time CRO, a 5 times VP of sales, and over the past 20 years, he has worked his way up from individual contributor at Seed and Series A and Series C, privately held, FTSE and the New York Stock Exchange listed tech organizations. He now helps tech companies to deliver revenue transformation projects with a range of partners. So welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Nick Buxton.
Thank you for having me, Janice. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm really interested in getting into a few things with you on this podcast. And the first was, there's a lot of buzz around product-led and sales-led growth, and you're talking from a new approach around value-led growth. Can you give me a bit more information about your thinking behind this?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been a really big fan of Wes Bush and the product-led growth movement. And as I've seen it play out with a load of different businesses that I've worked at in the past sort of 5 or 8 years, I've just been witness to it not working the way it should. And there's some underlying principles that just need to be true for product-led growth to work. And Wes talks about it pretty openly, but I don't think it's that well understood in founders and senior leadership teams, in that the biggest underlying assumption is that for product-led growth to work, the buyer needs to be the user. And how many solutions do we know where we're selling a solution and we're selling it to a stakeholder, and they are the signatory, they are the big part of the sign-off committee, but they're never going to use it. They're going to get the commercial benefit, and the business is going to get the commercial benefit, but they're never going to be the user. And a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs come at this by solving a business problem first rather than a user problem. So you then have this weird dichotomy of a product that's undeniably designed to solve a business need that isn't necessarily about a user need. So in those scenarios, product-led growth isn't going to work from the bottom up, because we're not selling it to the users. We're not solving a user problem that is a bottleneck in the business. It's more about business. So my take on this is, and what I've executed with a few clients, and we've had great successes, you still need to put the product first. Value needs to come first, but it's got to be sales enabled as well. We can't just give them a product and expect them to be successful. We need to give them some guidelines. We need to put some handrails in and help them realize the value of that product.
It's really interesting when you think about it. It's like, I can't imagine the actual buyer being the user in a B2B environment, and that we've got this whole area that seems to misfire. It's crazy, isn't it, really, that we seem to have missed the point with product-led growth if its very foundations and what it's based upon is incorrect.
Yeah, but it's a fantastic approach for when it works well. Zoom, we all want to use a product that works well, records meetings and is seamless to use and integrates. We are the users, and it just grows through use, and you end up getting to a point in a business where you reach critical mass. Someone in tech says, well, actually, we should have a license. And at that point, the sale is made. There are some really popular, really big growth stories at the moment. Cursor AI, who is one of the first businesses to reach 100 million in under 12 months recently. Again, product-led growth, but they're solving a developer need. They're helping developers code faster. They are going after product-led growth. But if we are a business that's built a product that is solving a business need, not necessarily a user need, we just can't use product-led growth. We can use a lot of the fundamentals, but we need to be able to make sure we target buyers and users separately. So we still market to them, we still sell the business value, but we need to make sure that once they come into the sales pipeline, we use sales tools, get the product in their hands, and make sure that we understand the value. Because I love the product-led growth because it removes barriers. It just gets the product into people's hands, which is, no matter your growth stage, that is the fundamental challenge we're trying to solve. Is we want to get our product into the hands of people who we've designed it for, and understanding how much value it adds. B2B is always 10, 15 years behind B2C, but if we imagine Red Bull, Monster, these sampling strategies work really well because they're getting the product out there and they're getting them to use the product before we're charging for it, before we're monetizing for it. And I talk to a lot of clients who are like, wow, I shouldn't give it away for free. But my counter to that is, how much would you pay for a core ICP to use your product? You'd pay a lot of money, right? You'd pay a lot of money for them to have a go with your product and realize the value. And if it's a good enough product, converting them to monetizing the strategy shouldn't be that hard.
And the feedback is immediate, isn't it? It's a new product that's going out to market, it's the quickest way to get feedback by putting it in the right hands and staying close to the customer. I mean, I think this is really interesting in that, are you solving a user need or are you solving a business need? And we very much talk about at Scale Your Sales customer-led growth.
Yes.
And really understanding the customer's journey and who are the key stakeholders in that purchasing process. So it seems to me that with a customer-led growth, because it's really focused on who is your customer, and it's never in B2B, it's never one customer. There's a whole army of them now, isn't it? Like you could be the decision-making unit could be 20 people and people that have no technical knowledge, but they may actually have the budgetary control. So understanding all those different stakeholders and the journey they go on and the information they need in order to make the decision. So it's customer-led growth. So just kind of realigned value-led growth with customer-led growth, and what you see as the benefits of one or over the other, or where they align.
Yeah, it's very, very similar in a lot of ways. The move to what I think we should all be talking about in value-led growth is a lot of the fundamentals will be the same with customer-led growth. We want people to be successful using our product as quickly as possible. The fundamental tenets with the stuff we talk about with value-led growth is that unless you're removing sales and marketing and putting product first, the results are always a bit muddied. It's like sales team, bad month, or the marketing aren't generating the leads. They weren't a great event. It's really difficult to know exactly when the product is ready to scale and the exact value that you're getting. So you've got to put the product first. And in the value-led growth model is we bring prospects in, we either for free or a very low price point like PLG, give them the product. We are engaging with the buyer and the buying committee to say, hey, Janice, this is the product we've built. We think it can help you do X and Y. We'll give it to you at this rate for a month, 2 months, 6 months. And at the end of that point, we will study the value. What would success look like? So that we've got this period of proof of value of, if it does this thing, we need to move into a commercial model where we have a fixed term or, monthly rolling contract or quarterly contract. But at that point, it's the point for us all to say, have you actually delivered on what it was that you wanted to do? And you can say, actually, Nick, no, sorry, that's not what we need, or absolutely, that's brilliant. We can sign off on a contract for 12 months, 24 months. But until you're doing that, you haven't really got the ability to prove out that you've got the confidence to sign a contract, because there's a load of things happening in our world at the moment. Marketing response rates are lower than ever. Capital's drying up in the market. There is buyer fatigue. Like you said, Janice, there's probably 8 to 10 people in each buying process now. Budgets are tighter, and we've now got this weird thing called the AI committee, which I'd love to talk some more about to anyone who's interested. But this is when ICPs will have a committee internally who will say, that's really cool, we might build it ourselves, which is a new threat to us as a selling unit. So we need to be able to say, we can do this thing for you, it's going to prove this value, and we're going to back ourselves to do it. We need to be able to show to you, Janice, that it will do it before we get to the end of the proof of value. But unless we can do that, we're not going to be able to improve our response rates or improve the customer experience, because we're just not delivering what we said we would.
Okay, so I can see that I can see that the user loves the product. They've sampled the product. They can see it working in their culture, in their environment. They know the value. But surely you sometimes come up with a problem with the actual buyer that hasn't had that same experience and engagement, but they're the ones that are the budget holders.
Exactly. That. There's the thing with product-led growth is, again, you could have just that scenario. Someone loves it. It's made my day easier, but it doesn't matter to a buyer. A buyer will be, detached from that. Unless it's giving commercial gain, I don't really care. As a commercial leader in a business, it needs to make sure that you deliver business value first to be able to have a seat at the table to say, we've delivered this what we're going to do for the rest of the year, and this is what the arrangement will look like. So a key difference in value-led growth to product-led growth is that in the sales process, you've got to be, same I would imagine with customer-led growth, you've got to be engaging the buyer, the commercial buying committee, and understanding what the business value is during that sales process or proof of value process. Because unless you do that, you've got no leg to stand on. But during that period, you've also got the things that you need in the softer process. So people buy from people, people buy trust. But unless you've got business value and a window to prove trust, it's very difficult. You can't just buy a person or a business on one meeting. That window of proof of value is to prove business value, but also it's my opportunity to say to you, Janice, look, you can trust me. We're going to do this thing together. We're going to deliver as you. We're a reputable partner to help deliver on whatever goal it is that you want to see delivered this year.
I think it's really interesting. I work with the information that comes out of OMG, and they're very much do assessments and really understand the seller mindset, what are the key competencies and how that impacts the revenue model and the success of it. And their data shows that fewer than 30% of salespeople have strong enough competencies to succeed in customer-led growth. And I would imagine that that's pretty similar in the value-led growth model as well, because we can talk about the data, but without the people that have the right competencies and mindset to deliver on this, you talked about the relationship that you have with customers and the different types of customers and the way that you are able to convey the value to the business is absolutely key. So I would imagine that may be an area on both sides of value-led growth and customer-led growth that needs more focus.
Absolutely. And I think we've got to take a really hard look at ourselves in those scenarios as well. As we're not setting those salespeople up for success. Like, we haven't given them a really good window for them to build relationships with people. If I'm selling you something that's a point in time, maybe it's mid-market or mid-value, maybe it's 30 to 50,000 pounds a year. I've maybe got 2 or 3 meetings and maybe some phone calls around it to build some trust with you, Janice. And it's just not enough. Like, trust is built over frequency of contact and doing what you said you'd do. And unless you've got the ability to stand there with your product and deliver the value and have lots of little meetings around a proof of value and ways of working and working with their team members and them seeing different sides of you, there isn't an opportunity to build a really strong connection. So I think it's probably even worse than those stats because they are very, very short transactional interactions over Zoom, over Teams, where you haven't got the ability to build real connections as people.
So what is going to overcome this?
I think the biggest thing is going to be a move to more value-led selling, and that's going to be driven by a few things. Our industry is going to be transformed over the next 5 years in how we commercially price our product as well. We've seen it with Salesforce. They are tearing up their pricing model and they're moving away from seats to value. So unless you get value from their AI agent, you won't pay, and it's on a credit system. They announced it a few weeks ago. They are riding the tide of that change, and we are going to have to surf it. So that is coming. We need to understand exactly what value we need to deliver, and then match our commercial model accordingly to that value. That's going to mean changing go-to-market, changing sales process. All of those things need to happen. And then to your point, Dan, can the people in the business deliver on a solution sell, a value-led or customer growth sell is what we need to deliver. So I think they're the core tenet of it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. And sales teams are going to look a lot smaller than they do now, and that's already started to happen. And you mentioned AI, and I'd love to kind of talk about that in a moment, and how that's AI agents and how that's changing our whole industry without being threatened that, oh, I'm going to lose my job. It's actually enabling us to skill up and release our time on the mundane things. So, I can see that it's, nothing but positive. Nevertheless, our industry is, as you say, 15 years. Probably, hopefully it's less than that, behind B2C in the way that we're able to adapt. And we have to adapt quicker and faster in order to maintain our competitive edge. So what is in place to enable the people and the processes to better align with the value solution?
I think there's going to be less people doing more. Headline summary is we're going to be far more enabled to do our day jobs more effectively, which means we'll have leaner go-to-market, leaner sales teams. I actually think we're going to see a return to a more 360 salesperson role because AI agents are getting so good, copywriting is getting great, ABM is becoming something that is either packageable in a product or something you can work with as a internal marketing agency or an external marketing agency's role. Your role is going to become sort of orchestrating all of those things, executing on your pipeline and transitioning them onto being successful on the platform. So I think all of those things are going to be true. Specifically, there are some very, very clever AI SDR agents that are coming along in terms of copywriting, researching, execution of response to messages on email. They're coming along on LinkedIn and other channels as well. I think that's a core tenet that's going to save a lot of time, because if you look at where SDRs and outbound spend their time, it's those things. I also think the job of marketing is going to be improved by that same thing. Research, content creation, imagery, copywriting are all going to be made so much simpler with much stronger AI tools. The meeting, note-taking, CRM updates. Imagine a world, and we're very close to it, where you don't have to scroll through pages of interactions with each prospect at each account to know exactly what's happening. You could just put a prompt in, give me the update, write me a report on the frequency of this account. How have they billed? What has our performance been this quarter? Create me a dashboard on this so I can show my investors. That's the world we're going to, and it's going to be much more about making everyone more effective at their job.
I absolutely love what you say about we're moving back towards more of a 360 sales capability, which means that we need to enable that salesperson in order to do the 360 role. And OMG's data says that 92% of sales leaders don't have, this is the leaders, let alone their team, don't have the core sales management competencies in order to coach or hold reps accountable. So we have all of these enablers in place, but we don't have the kind of basic fundamental sales competencies and capabilities within our teams. Hence, why I love the OMG data that's able to assess where you are and help you fill those core competency gaps, so that we do have a future focus workforce that's enabled them to have the right mindset and the will to sell, and the kind of skills is lesser important because AI's taken over much of those roles for us. So yeah, I love what you say about the 360 abilities and capabilities of our salespeople. I'd really like to move to you've got some speaking opportunities that are actually coming up, and I'd like to kind of like understand more about your enablement of leaders, and how they can better align with CROs to drive revenue. Because I know that you're talking about this at the Sales Enablement Summit.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. I'm talking on both days of the Sales Enablement Summit. I'm talking on the Sales Enablement track. So how do sales enablement professionals work with CROs and align themselves on revenue targets, strategy? How is it that they become an indispensable team? And spoiler alert, it's going to be a much tighter relationship because they are the team that's going to orchestrate and plumb together this next generation of AI platforms and integration. I think where we're probably going to see headcount increase is actually sales enablement and sales operations, because we can make each individual seller or pipeline generator or marketing person more effective, but we need a very, very slick integration of all of these things to make sure that everyone is enabled. And that's going to take some working out. It's not going to be cookie cutter across everything. It's not going to be the same for every business in each quarter for each ICP. So there's a big job to be done there for each of them. The other day, excuse me, the other day I'm going to be talking at the product-led growth summit. So that is very similar talking points for today, is how do we help salespeople, but in a product-led growth style. So we're going to be talking about value-led growth, but also that core tenant of, is the person you're aiming for with your solution a user or a buyer? Fundamentally, we need to start there, and then we can back out into the strategy of product-led or value-led growth or sales-led growth.
I think it's really interesting how the role of CROs has evolved, and how they've become almost business managers, revenue business managers. How do you see that role changing and evolving going forward? Because you've mentioned that the dynamics of their team is going to change. There's some areas where there's contraction and other areas where there's real growth in headcount.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart summary, Janice. The focus of making sure we can actually execute on these plans means we're going to be, it's a bit of a contradiction, but I think we need to be more strategic and more executional than ever, with less time spent on management of people. Is that we're going to have leaner teams. We'll probably have more time for people management because we've got some tech time back. But it means that we need to know exactly what our next move is, how our product is adding value to each of our ICPs, and then align that with the strategy. Less time being spent in spreadsheets, but more time probably prompt engineering, making sure all of our platforms work together with sales enablement to make sure that we're as effective as possible.
Interesting. All right. So how would you advise a CEO in light of these changes?
Depending on where you are on your growth spectrum, you need to go back to the very basics of how does your product add value? Over what time frame, what metric do they call it, by what increment, and to what business personalities in the business? Because you're going to have to, at some point in the future, price around that metric. And you're also going to set yourselves up for success with a stronger ICP, a stronger marketing plan, better ABM. Everything will be improved by understanding the value add, because value will back out to ICP, which will back out to persona, which will back out to sales strategy, sales process. So if we can understand what the value is and the metrics it improves, that's the way we need to start. So take a really hard look at what success stories have you had from your client base, who's having the most success, where's the best margin, and then make sure you can distill that down into a really succinct go-to-market plan.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So, Nick, what is the one personal value or belief that has helped shape your approach to leadership and your professional success?
That's a great question. I've been really fortunate to work with some brilliant and terrible managers and leaders.
Me too.
Yeah, we're always so good. And what I've reflected on over the past sort of 5 or 10 years is that the biggest mantra I have to live by is that people want to work with me. At a basic level, there's lots of jobs, there's lots of money, there's lots of options for anyone to want to work with anyone else. But we need people to show up every day energized and bringing their best version of themselves to do their job, to make sure that we all get the most out of them. And to make sure that I can carry that mantra, I need to be able to add to them. I need to be able to make them better or make them enjoy their time at work. So there's a really strong focus on anyone I work with in making sure that I can improve them, you know, and what level they're working at. I'm bringing something new to them and that we're enjoying working together. We have to share the same bit of carpet with all of these strangers for a long, long time. And if we're not enjoying our work and we don't want to work together, it's fundamentally not going to work. So mine is people have got to want to work together and with me.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, the relationships, you know, with bad managers that don't, I kind of knew quite early on, didn't trust my own instincts. And yeah, I'm much better at doing that now. But I think you're so right. You've got to want to work together, and there's got to be a certain connection between you. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you decide who. I think you've got in interviews, you've got to interview them as much as they interview you, and have some non-negotiables really. But I think that's interesting, the relationship you have with the person, the key people that you work with.
Yeah, if you don't have it and there's not that two-way, there's so much silent quitting. People just sort of turn up and they might even hit their KPIs, but if they're really not there and in it with you and you don't want to have to like go to war with them, it's really difficult. So you've got to interview them, they've got to interview you. It's got to be a real two-way thing as you go through that process. And ideally, it makes your job easier as you go forward as well, because if you go into another role, there's a bench of people who probably want to work with you again.
Yeah.
And they're probably pretty good at their job. So it's one of those things that pays dividends and interest as you go on, is that you just build this really nice bench of people who are good at their job, want to work with you, and have probably got a really good set of skills that are going to be relevant to you in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Nick, so how can listeners get hold of you?
They can look for me on LinkedIn. It's Nick Buxton. That's Buxton on LinkedIn. I do all of my marketing and sort of blogging on LinkedIn. So please hit me up on there, drop me a DM, or any of the events that I'm talking at, please come and find me. Sales Enablement is the next one, but there will be a few more coming up as well. So yeah, get in touch when you can.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, Nick. Really enjoyed the conversation.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me, Janice.
If you enjoy this episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, explore other episodes of insightful guest conversations or watch the caption show on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode filled with strategies to help you scale your sales. I love to hear your thoughts, so please share your views and leave a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more revenue generators just like you. So until next time, keep scaling your sales.